We are back in action. Today's video about catering training for your, can't even say personality, but for your preferred training style. So when you hear this, what is the first things that come into your head, and how do you even determine how you're going to sequence training through the year, months, week, whatever for a person when you first sit down, chat with them, or even when you read their first intake form feedback?
Yeah. So the very first thing, like when it comes to not just training, but a lot of the, like, how am I going to structure the program, right? The actual, like, this is probably what most people have tuned in for is like, okay, what is the actual, we talked about all the basics. We haven't even talked about the gym, right? We haven't even talked about the gym yet. This is kind of like the first introduction to gym talk, right? So the first thing that I like to do is kind of get a level of understanding of what this person enjoys in life. And then that starts to kind of paint the picture of how the training should be structured for their enjoyment. Remember, because I'm not after, like, all the people that I work with are not want to be professional powerlifters or strongmen. That's not the bulk of the people that I deal with. The bulk of the people that I deal with are lifestyle people that just want to perform really well and are fitness enthusiasts. And they do have physique aspirations, right? And we all know, we've talked about this in all the episodes, consistency trumps everything, right? If I can get them to love their workouts, to want to come back every single week or every single day, and they enjoy that, they're going to be hard. Trust me, they're going to be hard, but they enjoy it is the point. They leave and they're like, wow, that was awesome. I really liked it. Or they might be actually nervous to come to the workout, not because they're scared, but because they're going to be challenged in a way that makes them want to come back, right? Yeah. That's where you get long-term consistency when it comes to training and execution of the training. So some of the things that I like to kind of figure out is, right off the bat, I like to separate them, whether they're a novelty seeker or not. And that's pretty easy to do, because most of the time their job starts to give that away. Okay. And their hobbies start to give that away. So that's one of the first things I like to do is I like, what's your job? Is it dangerous? Is it exciting? Is it boring? Right? Like, is it monotonous? Is it safe? Those types of things. Because right away I can separate people into a category of basically two personality types if they're novelty seekers. So military personnel, all kinds of government agencies, things of that nature, or high-end CEOs, but they also happen to have, on my free time, I like to go skydiving, or I like to, you see what I mean? Like, yep. Hobbies, like little stuff. And then you go, okay, you like to be thrilled and aroused. You like to be taken out of your element. So now that starts to get into, okay, so I'll ask them a few more questions of like previous sports they might have played, right? If they come to me with like a novelty seeking type of personality, and they also happen to mention, oh, by the way, I also did CrossFit or for a little while, or I kind of enjoyed it, or I played a field sport, right? So now it's like, okay, this person loves to use their whole body. Both of those instances are whole body explosive type movements, especially if you're a field athlete. So then that starts to tell me, okay, this person is not, for sure, not going to do very well with tempo work. This is not a person that's going to do very well with like slowing the movement down and feeling their muscles. That's not that's not going to arouse this person.
Yeah.
The next thing that I decipher is, okay, if they're explosive and they like novelty, isolation work's probably not going to be good. This is not the person that I'm going to prescribe bicep curls to, right? This is the person I'm going to prescribe maybe cheek curls to, like whole body. Hey, I want you to do some cheek intentionally. I want you to do some Arnold style cheek curls. Use your whole body, use the whole momentum of your body, be explosive with that movement. Or even, maybe for legs, they're the type of person that I'm going to not necessarily do leg extensions very much, but I'm going to do sissy squats, for example, or something along that, because it's going to be more challenging and they're going to have to use their whole body to stabilize the thing. Yes, they're both working the quads, right? Very hard. And both of them are kind of isolation movements specifically to target the carbs or the quads, sorry. But they are significantly different in how they're perceived. When you're sitting, you're in a relaxed, you can really focus on isolating that target muscle, and the rest of the body, you're trying to keep it not involved, right? Whereas in the other one, you need to keep the whole body involved, or else you lose tension through the whole body, and now you can't focus on the quads. Those are two different stimuluses when it comes to the brain, right? One,
And
I'll
I
just flip
believe
the one.
something like that is very kind of pronounced, what we have always talked about. Know where you're at before you try to get where you want to be. You know,
Yes, absolutely. Because if you don't know this fine point of I'm a very explosive, novelty seeking person, um, and I prescribe you a whole bunch of isolation machine work, you're going to hate that damn workout. You're going to go in and you're going to be like, fuck, I don't like doing this. I don't know why. Like, you're going to question a lot of the things that I'm giving you. And then you'll just be like, well, I'll just go through it for like a week or two or three. And then next thing you know, week 4 comes around. You're like, nah, I missed 2 days in the at the gym. No big deal in your mind, right? And you tell me that. The moment you tell me that, I'm like, I'm not doing my job right, because you should not necessarily want to go there, but you should be like, you know what? I actually need to go there because I know that it's good for me, and it actually stimulates me back. It feeds me back to to all the other stuff I'm doing in my day, right?
I
So,
think a lot of people are well educated that they should be doing some kind of training, but they are struggling to find what actually fits them. And there's always so much like a prejudice that I need to train just that, like he does or she does or this and that. But in reality, you just need to be consistent. You're going to get results no matter how you train. At the beginning of this year, I did 22 weeks of literally, like we train in Canada. That was my
uh,
style of training. And everyone was like, "Are you getting ready for bodybuilding show?" I'm like, "I haven't done a single bicep curl for the last 5 months." You
yeah,
still look
yeah.
good if you train hard. That's just an outcome.
Yeah, it really is. Well, you got the basics down and you're training hard, right? You have the basics down and you're training hard. Are you going to get results? I can pretty much guarantee you, if you were already doing those things, you wouldn't be talking to me.
Mm.
Like that, that's just that simple. If you happen to be somebody who's lucky enough that like your work revolves around being outside and eating good food, and you train hard, you're going to look good. You're not going to be the person looking for a coach. So you're 100% right. If you're training hard and you're hitting all these basics that we've covered in previous episodes, you're going to be ahead of a lot of people, because the training hard is the part that's going to make the change over time, which is what we're talking about today. How do you make it so that it's easy to do it over time?
Yeah.
So that it's enjoyable. It's something that you look forward to every single Monday or Sunday or whatever your first day of training is, right? You're like, oh, great, it's time to train this week. And this is what I'm talking about. Nailing down some of your personality traits starts to tell me where you're at, right? The correct assessment. That's where it all starts. The correct assessment starts us off on the right foot when it comes to the training. Some other things that a correct assessment will do is these types of person, like a novelty seeker, kind of intense personality type of thing. They're also going to be the people that tend to eat for pleasure and not function, right? So now you have to build your nutritional program around that, right? It's more of, hey, this, I'm not going to be able to give this person really mundane food choices. They're going to have to get a little bit creative with it. So this type of person might be the person that needs an actual meal plan, or an actual plan that incorporates like a refeed cheat meal type thing. Those exist. They're not for everybody. Trust me, they're not for everybody. But for some people, they work really well because they're novelty seekers. They're seeking novelty, right? So it's like, okay, you know what? Nail what you're doing for these 5 days just by the book. On the 6th day, I want you to go out and have a refeed meal, right? And it's purely for dopamine response. It's purely for all these things. But that's because it fits them. Whereas another person might be what I call like a type 5 personality, where they're extremely regimented, right? So going off plan for them is actually detrimental,
Yeah.
right? And so then it becomes, okay, for this person, I'm not going to design a program like that. I'm actually going to design a program that tells them exactly what to eat and when to eat it, right? Because that's what makes them tick. They're like, oh, it's 2 p.m. I need to eat this. And that is what drives them, checking off the boxes,
Mm.
making sure that everything is done. So that's a completely different personality. You see what I'm saying?
So
And
how
those
would
are,
you plan training for someone like that?
for somebody like that, those are going to be, they're rare to find wanting to lift weights, because those types of personalities, the type that are very regimented like that, you'll find them a lot more in endurance type work, because they're so regimented and so robotic with what they do that they need the exercise to be more fluid, right? It needs to be in a rhythmic type fashion, and they're really good at expending energy. In other words, these are the type of people, when they get thrown off of their regiment, they're the type of people that have an anxiety attack. They're the type of people that all of a sudden they start sweating for no reason, and they're like, "What the fuck's going on?" And that's why. Sorry for the language, but that's why, right? Because they are really, really dedicated to that task. So how do you get them to do that in training? How do you feed that, right? How do you counter that so that they realize, hey, training is actually really enjoyable. It takes me out of my anxiety, neuroticness, right? And so for those types of people, I'm kind of one of those people. So I know this like dear to me. I like a fast paced workout. I like a workout where it's very rhythmic. Hey, boom, boom, boom. I got a sweat going. I'm really in a rhythm, right? 4 or 5 rounds of something, superset or giant set style. And I'm out of my mind. I don't have time to be neurotic. I only have time to focus on the tasks at hand and keep them repetitive and keep really gassing myself. So that's one way to really accomplish weight training with these type of people. And the other thing is, I tend to add in a little bit more plyometric type work for these types of people. So like the extensive hops that I've seen you do, right? Like I'll literally do a whole workout. Hey, for 20 minutes, I want you to do extensive hops until you can't hop anymore. Trust me, you get done with something like that, your legs are going to be shot. They're going to be shot. And you will be like, what the hell? The next day you'll wake up and you'll be able to barely walk. But the
Yeah.
whole 20 minutes, you're like, oh, this is easy. This is nothing. I'm just hopping. And then they get done and they're like, wow, that really destroyed me. Very simple, very rhythmic, gets the job done, especially for these types of people, because then they go, oh, that was awesome. For like an hour and a half, I just kind of lost myself. I had no anxiety. I didn't have anything to go on. And then they get back to their day to day stuff. So that's complementary to their personality. You see what I'm saying?
So when you go about these things, how can you tell someone, hey, this is how you determine who you are? What would be the things that you would be looking at for someone who is reaching out to you? So you describe what you are looking for. How would someone at home just go, hey, because of this, I might be this or that. And this is why I'm not enjoying this. And I might be looking for someone who can program me this kind of workout. And that sounds like really
Yeah. So that's it's a little bit tricky without interview type style, right? But like there are some basic things that you can answer for yourself. One of them is your job, right? Like that, just like I opened with, what's your job and what's your hobbies? Those are big indicators.
yeah.
Okay.
I
If
think
your
it's
job,
probably need to be distinguished as well. Do you actually like your job?
yeah, and that's what I was going to get to. Is your job a necessity or is something that you've wanted to do, right? Now, once you distinguish that, then what is your job, right? So, for example, I listed some really easy ones that are voluntary, basically government agencies, military personnel, anything that has to do with adventures and thrill seeking that's part of your job, right? You've chosen that, right? Nobody forced you into those jobs. You chose those jobs and you probably like it or at least ventured into it on purpose. So that right away starts to tell me, you are seeking something different than other people. Normal people don't venture into those jobs. So then I go, okay, what's your hobbies? Most of those people, if they really love their job, they don't have a hobby, right? So their job provides all of the stimulus. But you'll also find that in those job categories, you're going to find that, I like to jump out of airplanes, or I like to go drag racing, race my car, race my motorbike, or I like to go trail running, right? Out, like everything is, you start to get a grasp of everything is new because you're not going to jump out of the plane in the same way twice. Like it's just not going to happen. You're not going to go race your car and it's going to be the same experience every time. You see what I'm saying? So even their hobbies are hobbies that actually change every time they go out and do the hobby.
Yeah.
Yep. And so those are ways to, that's the kind of like one nervous system category of people. The other one that we kind of briefly talked about is, are you very regimented, right? With life in general? And then what's your previous history? That's the other question that I like to ask people. What's your previous history of athleticism? We talked briefly about it in previous episodes on that tells me about how good you're going to get into the groove and how well the progress should go, etc. But it also starts to tell me about your personality type, right? Because most people's previous sport history has to do when they were younger, like high school, college age, right? Those were voluntary, right? Though you went and seeked those sports out, right? Especially when you were younger, your parents maybe signed you up for all the sports and you're like, I didn't like that one or that one or that one, but I chose this one, right? So that starts to tell me a lot about your personality. If it was track and field and endurance type stuff or explosive stuff, that already starts to tell me, oh, okay, so I'm not going to do tempo work for you. I'm going to do more explosive work, maybe a little bit lighter, maybe some bands or some chains, as much as people are afraid to use those. Those are great tools if you are using them for the right person, right? Things of that nature. So that's a third question. What's your previous sport history? Another question would be, what's your relationship with food? Do you actively seek out new food all the time? Or are you more of, you know what, I kind of stick to like three or four things and I just eat them on rotation and I don't really plan any of it, right? And then there's like a third category there, which is the neurotic people, where it's like, no, I only stick to these foods and I actually only eat them at certain times of the day. You see what I mean? Like that's another. So again, it starts to tell me regiment wise, how am I going to program things? Is it going to be super strict or is it going to be more, more of, hey, bodybuilding style, like, hey, I just want you to hit 5 sets of biceps. I don't care how you do them however you want, right? And those are going to be the people that are like not regimented but like novelty, and then there's people that like novelty with regiment, things of that nature. So I like I said, we could get into exactly the 5 categories that I like to classify them. They're by no means like finished, right? People will display a little bit in both categories or 2 or 3 categories, and that's perfect. But it starts to tell me the no's, right? Because the first thing I don't want to do is write a program that you hate week one, right? Like that's not the goal. The goal is to get as close as possible to something you enjoy right from the gate, right out of the get go, so that only gets better from there.
Hmm. So how do you get someone who is coming to you, for example, and they value variety and contribution, growth, all those kind of things, but they show you this bikini chick or bodybuilding guy and say, hey, I want to look like this, and you're like, yeah, you're probably not going to fit in that.
Yeah, well, so that comes down to, that's a little bit different. That's more of like, hey, realistically speaking, this goal is going to take this much time, possibly this much drugs, right? Like it depends on what they showed me, right? Like if they're a stick, they only weigh 150 pounds, and they show me a bodybuilder that weighs 220 pounds. I'm like, that's going to take a long time. I hope you realize that. I'm going to explain all the ins and the outs, right? So but at no point do I discourage them from that, right? Uh, because you have to understand where their starting point is, right? Their starting point is way below. So I try to make that abundantly clear when they show me like something that's like, oh, this is not going to happen in a year. It's not going to happen in a year. But I'm more than happy to help you get to that as much as you want to work towards it, right? And so then you have to outline that. Now, when it comes to their starting point, once we start putting the program together, as far as what's going to consist of the gym time and what's going to consist of the nutrition aspect, that if I do it right, within 6 weeks, they're enjoying what they're seeing. and not just necessarily the changes in their body, but they're enjoying what they're seeing when they open up their tablet or their Excel spreadsheet, and they go, "Oh hell yeah, this workout looks fun, right? It looks great. I want to do that." And that is where I can be like, okay, you keep this consistency up, the goal that you now set is that much closer, right? Like that's the point. Like I try to not make it as a discouraging thing. Hey, this is going to take 5 years, or I don't know if you could even get there. I don't frame it like that. I frame it like this is going to take a lot of damn hard work. It's going to take a lot of time. How do we make that time possibly get shortened, right? And that's by having you execute extremely good workouts. How do I get you to execute extremely good workouts? By enjoying them. It's that simple, right? If I tell you I want you to grow the biggest biceps as possible, but you hate doing concentration curls, and all I program for you is concentration curls, you're not going to get big biceps. I don't give a shit how many concentration curls you do. If you absolutely hate them, you're going to put less effort into them, mentally speaking. And that's where it all starts. What does muscle growth mean? It means there's tension on the muscle and the muscle is being innervated. In other words, you're sending a strong neurological signal to those muscle groups to fire and contract as hard as possible. If you enjoy the workout, you're going to do that a lot more volitionally without having to be coaxed to do it if you're enjoying the workout.
And this is also like a big difference why you can see girls or guys or whatever coming in a gym doing the same exact workout, having the same exact diet and whatever, but results are completely different.
Yes, yeah, you see that
fully immersed, another one is there on a phone in between sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did the same work. They did the same work.
Yeah.
Logistically speaking, they did the same work. They're putting in the same effort, right? But it's not being accounted for right here the same. It makes a difference. Trust me. I mean, like, there's all these studies of like, hey, if you get hurt, you break your arm, but you visualize and even do things with your good arm, that influences what's going on in the other arm or the other leg. How is that possible? It's because your brain is doing that, right? Your brain is a key concept to training. Anybody who doesn't think about the brain as far as like how it is involved and stimulated in your training style or your training program, you're missing half the battle. For sure. Like I can say that pretty
confidently. A lot of people come in and I always keep asking them, are you going to the gym to get results or are you going to the gym to get tired? Just recently I got interaction with somebody and he mentioned, I am training for strength. I'm like, what is training for strength?
Isn't that all training?
He could not define what he had no plan whatsoever. And I tried to get it out of him to admit that he has no plan. But it basically was going to the gym just to get tired. And he was
essentially, and I find that all the time.
And you're like,
I want to take that a little bit further, the whole training for strength thing, right? Just so to imply the difference in people, right? Okay. So let's just say you're a novelty seeking person that's very explosive and you're training for strength. Okay. So if you told me that, hey, I just want to be stronger, like I don't really have physique goals, I just want to be stronger, and through your questions and everything I find out, okay, you're an intensity type person and you are a novelty seeker and you used to shot put. Okay, so you're a very explosive person. Am I going to tell you, hey, you're going to do a 5x5 workout and you're going to do some tempo and pause work? That person's already in their head going, shoot me, right? But that same person, if I go, hey, we're going to work up to a fast, heavy double or single, and then after that, I'm going to want you to cut the load in half, but I want you to add bands and I want you to do triples until the speed slows down. That person, that same explosive person that's training for strength is going to go, this sounds interesting. I kind of want to do that, because I'm playing to their attributes, but I'm focusing on the rep scheme and the amount of volition that person can bring to demonstrating explosive strength, right?
Yeah. As other thing, it's as always, you have to have a plan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you can't just be like, I'm training for strength and then Do what, right?
Yeah.
Just the 5x5, just the 5x5
Well, like I
workout, and
did
try
five
to
sets
add.
of this weight and try to add a little bit of weight every single week, but that's not how you train for strength. There is no
No, no,
plan.
no. That's literally trying to find your peak performance, right? Like,
Every single
okay,
training session.
right. Like, okay, I added 5 pounds. I was able to execute that. I'll add 5 pounds next week. Can I execute that? That I'll do it. 4 weeks go by and then you can't add 5 pounds. Did you get not strong or what's not like, you see what I mean? Like the dilemma
Yeah.
there is when you're training for strength, you actually have to elicit the changes here first so that you get stronger because the act of adding weight doesn't make you stronger. The act of adding weight says I got stronger. Like there's a completely different
Yeah.
thing going on there. And let's finish that thought process. Okay, you're training for strength, but instead of a novelty seeking explosive person, I find that you are more of somebody who needs sensation. Like you're basically you need a little bit of variations. You're like, ah, man, I get really bored really easy with training programs. Like, hey, I've gone through 2 or 3 coaches. You're the third person I've talked to, or something along those lines. Then automatically, it starts to look like, um, okay, this person is probably not going to do well on a long, regimented, um, like 8 week long program. um, it's going to be more along the lines of, okay, every 2 to 3 weeks I'm going to actually ramp you up and start with a different but similar movement, right? So let's just talk about a squat or something along those lines. um, you could go in and be like, okay, this week we're going to do, and this is a little bit more along what people do in West Side style, where it's like, hey, we're going to pick an exercise that's similar in movement and we're going to ramp it up for 2 or 3 weeks, or even leave it the same, but we're going to add some different elements to it. Maybe some explosiveness, maybe some tempo work. So this person could be like, hey, I'm going to do explosive squats this week, these 3, 4 weeks. The next week, I'm going to do tempo squats. Again, we're still displaying attributes of strength in the squatting pattern, but we're doing it differently for this person that requires variation, right? Every 4 weeks, they're like, oh, this is exciting. I'm going to get a new thing, but it's still similar and it's still doing the same thing that I want as far as adding strength to my squat pattern, right?
Mm.
Um, and then another variation of a person would be somebody who's completely sensation based. So this is somebody's like bodybuilders, like straight up bodybuilders. Like I need to feel the muscle. I need to really feel it burn and stuff like that, right? So for that person, first off, I probably wouldn't be training them for strength, but say they were a bodybuilder and wanted to compete as a powerlifter, right? So then I would be like, okay, how are we going to train your squat pattern? You already have really big muscles there, and you are probably not going to enjoy explosive work because you don't feel anything with explosive work, right?
Yeah.
It's just about firing, right?
Yeah. And often
And
those people also think that if I don't feel it, nothing's happening.
exactly, right. So then I would be like, okay, for you, I want you to do tempo negatives and fast positives. The fast positives aren't really going to do much because I'm actively tiring those muscles out with a slow negative. But that slow negative, they're going to feel every bit of that. You see what I mean? They're going to be like, oh, this 5 second down squats with an explosive up. Trust me, you get through just 4 or 5 sets of 4 reps with those. You work up to a heavy 4 and then 5 seconds down, explosive up, 5 seconds down, explosive up. That person that's sensation based is now getting a strength stimulus, but still getting a sensation stimulus that makes them want to elicit a bigger response. You see what I'm saying? Little tricks like that played to your personality. Again, I talked about squatting in every single one of these scenarios,
Yeah.
but they're squatting a little bit different. And in every one of these scenarios, I'm pushing them towards strength. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And as we always remind, none of this is relevant if you haven't nailed basics down. Have you had your hydration sorted out? Have you had actually checked your health out that you can actually train hard enough? Will your nutrition positioning will be efficient? Are you good with getting your oxygen in and out of your body? All those kind of things. And only then you go into, hey, this is how I develop the training plan for myself. uh, because otherwise you're just gonna run in so many issues before even enjoying your training, no matter how well set up it is exactly to you.
Right. And then once it is, okay, once it is set up, like I described, these are the beginning stages, what I just described. It's literally one exercise that I just talked about. Once you do that for several exercises and all 3 or 4 days that you're going to train every week, the next thing I do is I just look for progress in your mentality of what your check-ins, right? Like, hey, I really enjoyed my training. I'm actually really loving it. I'm actually struggling with my nutrition a little bit, so we adjust the nutrition, etc. And then maybe 6 weeks into it, it's like, hey, the training is going good. I really enjoy it, but I feel like I'm just kind of missing something. And at that point, it doesn't mean redesign things. What it means is, okay, where did we see progress? This is where pictures and things of that nature come in. It's like, okay, we were targeting your upper body. What's your upper body look like? And then we go, oh, actually, it looks really good. You've made a lot of changes. We've gotten some measurements and you've made some changes. So do you want to focus on something a little bit different? Or do you want even a bigger upper body? If the case is, I want even a bigger upper body, well, then it goes, okay, talking about strength versus muscle gain, then it goes, okay, we got a bigger upper body and you wanted to get a little bit bigger. Let's train this new muscle for strength for a period of time, short. And I can design that strength block to match their personality. So they're still going to enjoy it, right? And so now that strength block for their upper body goes for maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And the first thing they say is, hey, this is different. I like it. It's going to take a little bit to adjust to producing a lot of force with all this new muscle tissue that I got. So we run it for 6, 7 weeks. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm kind of done with this a little bit. I still want my upper body to be a little bit bigger. We've gotten it stronger. So now we go, okay, let's fluctuate all this upper body work from strength work to muscle building work, but with the design of matching your personality. Whereas somebody who's not experienced enough will go, okay, strength work. Let's stick to really, adding weight every week and making you stronger. Like, okay, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't, right? You may or may not enjoy it, that's for sure. Okay. And then when we transition from strength phase to muscle building phase, we're going to do it all bodybuilding style, right?
So how do you go with somebody who is talking about, I want to get stronger? Let's just give an example. And all he does is just lifts heavy every single week. And we know that's not going to get very far. So how do you retract and design the plan that he still feels like he's working towards strengths, but he's still getting that extremely hard work sensation at the end of his training session?
So for somebody who's sensation based, like is that what you're talking about? How do I do strength work for somebody who's sensation based?
So what I mean is, how do you pull him back? Because he clearly enjoys just lifting heavy every single training session, which we know is not going to get him extremely strong.
Right. Okay. So this would be the case of a person who is more of the novelty seeker. That's why he wants to lift heavy. Like, that's the whole point. Yeah. It's an adrenaline rush to lift heavy, right? So he gets off on that from a noradrenaline, dopamine type response. So that is somebody where I'd be like, okay, I want you to work up to something heavy, but I'm going to put restrictions on it. So if they're an explosive person, that's where I would go, hey, let's lighten the load. So I have them work up to something heavyish, like, hey, I want it to be fast, triple or double. And then I want you to take the load off, add some bands, try to repeat that type of work, right? That's a quick and easy way for somebody who's explosive and trying to lift heavy, but isn't getting anywhere. It's because they're taking it to the edge every time. So instead, I want them to just get a little bit of a bump, that dopamine response, but then I want them to lower the weight, put some bands on there. So now there's an actual stimulus. They can do, 5 or 6 or 7 sets of triples at that. That's a bigger stimulus than just going in and lifting heavy for 1 or 2 sets or even 3 sets. If somebody is not explosive and they're more along the lines of somebody who's what I call a very slow, grindy lifter. So in other words, they lift heavy, but every motor pattern that they do is very slow and methodical, right? So almost like a machine, right? They're very robotic. That I wouldn't do explosive work for them. I would be like, okay, we're going to work up to something like a heavy 3-second pause deadlift, right? So that already puts a limiter on how much load they're going to use. but it's still going to be heavy, right? I want them to go as, give me a heavy triple, but I want every rep to do a 5-second pause at the bottom. They're going to use half the weight that they're used to. So now I'm circumventing orthopedic issues. I'm circumventing overreaching issues because the load isn't as high, but their perception of, holy crap, that was really freaking hard. That almost killed me. I almost didn't make it up on that last rep. That's still there. You see what I'm saying? So I start changing the method to fit their personality while still catching some of the other things that they want. Like, I want to lift heavy, right? Okay, lift heavy.
And how would you go in opposite way for someone who is wanting to get big, but all he does is just singles, triples, and stuff like that?
Yes, okay, exactly, right. So that's a complete mismatch. Hey, you're wanting to get big, but you only do explosive triples. Okay, why don't we do something a little bit different? Like, I want you to, okay, so they're an explosive person, but they want to get big, right? That's the dilemma. Okay, so then I go, okay, I want you to do ongoing sets of rhythmic triples. Let's just talk about maybe quads, right? Quads, right? So they do heavy triples of squats, but they're not getting bigger quads, right? Most people would be like, well, just do sets of 10, right? Let's just do sets of 10. Well, this person's going to hate that because they're a very explosive person, and that's why they're doing triples, right? So how do we circumvent that? I would do it in a superset or a giant set fashion even. So I would go, hey, I want you to put on a decent load on the squat bar, and I want you to do an explosive triple. Then I want you to move to the leg extension, and I want you to do 5s really hard. I want you to do 2 sets of 5, just a set of 5, and then rest 30 seconds, another set of 5. Then I want you to get off of that, and I want you to do sissy squats. I want you to do as many sissy squats as you can explosively get in you. And then I want you to do 4 or 5 high jumps, right? That person just went through explosive work, explosive work, explosive work, explosive work, but the volume is significantly different than when they were just coming in and doing just some heavy, even if they did 10 sets of triples, that's a decent amount of volume, but I just quadrupled the volume in literally less than 3 minutes because they're going to go from one exercise to the other exercise to the other exercise. Then I'm going to go, okay, rest 20 seconds to get your breath back, execute it again, do 3 rounds of that, do it explosively, right? So now this person is explosive, but is definitely going to get bigger because that muscle group is now suffering way more volume.
And this is a key difference for everyone who's listening, that you can see same person doing same stuff and someone else is doing completely same stuff. They're going to get completely different results because their commitment to execution is completely different. So and understanding which one fits you is extremely important, because without sticking to anything, you're not going to get anywhere. If you only come in to do, hey, my plan says 4 sets of 12, okay, I'm going to do this, or you come in, oh, God damn it, 4 sets of 12 at this weight, I love it.
Right.
Those people will get completely different result at the end. And this is why it's so important to sit back and acknowledge where you are, where you're heading, and does this even fit your emotional needs, let's say? Because we are all functional emotions. When we try to make money, it's not to spend money, it's to get some kind of emotion. When we're hanging out with people, it's not to hang out with people, it's to get some kind of emotion. When we eat, it's not to eat food, it's to get some kind of emotion from that food. Training is exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just another paradigm of being human. What are you here to do? What do you enjoy, right? Yeah. And then that's where it starts to get tailored and consistency starts to thrive.
Awesome. Right, David. Thanks for your time as usual, and I'll catch up with you in the next video.
Awesome.